Well, without further ado, let's get into what are these 5 things. You will say, Mark, you have already told me these things. I can't hear you talk about it again. This is the deal. In education, it is all about hearing something over and over again and applying it. If you don't apply it or you don't look at how you can use it further, you're missing the point. The fundamentals of photography have not changed. You have to understand those fundamentals, and that's what this 5-step program is all about. At the heart of it is visualization. We got to know our equipment. Then we get into sharing, we get into capturing, and then we process our image and we share it. And those are the 5 steps that you repeat over and over and over. You may say, Mark, that was so obvious. We all know that. Well, why did it take me thousands of hours of interviews and dozens of years of study to come out with what are the 5 points of photography? Well, that's what they are. So let's take a look at them, you guys. First step, the most important step, the one that you never want to miss, is your power of visualization. What does that mean? It means you see it in your mind's eye before you press the shutter. That could be 1 split second before you press the shutter. It could be a year. You could be waiting for just the right light, and you keep going back to one location and photographing it, and then finally, bam, there's your vision. Okay? But you are the most important ingredient. This guy, whoever he is more important than the equipment. It's more important than your processing ability. You're the one that controls the camera, and your vision is what guides that. Do not forget that. That is the thing that you can instantly change your photography with today, right now. As soon as I'm done, you can go out, start visualizing, and start improving your photography. Okay, so what does visualization mean? You know, there's this great quote, visualize this thing that you want, see it, feel it, believe in it, make your mental blueprint and begin to build. You get the idea. It's the action of visualizing. It's the power or process of forming a mental picture or vision. Get the idea, then go out and photograph it. Boom. How do you strengthen your visualization? Go to museums. Every great photographer that I've ever talked to has mentioned this, and great artists for that matter. Now, if you can't go to a museum because they're locked down, fine. You can go to their websites. There are plenty that are open. You can also look at books. If you have access to a library, you may or may not. They may or may not be open. You can check out books, look at art, look at it, and do these steps. How was that photograph or painting composed within the frame? Look at it and write it down in your notebook. That's why it's over to the right. How was it lit? Where's the light coming from? We're going to get into that in a minute. And how did the light strike the subject? There's a lot of other things you can get out of it, but look at those points and really draw them in to see for yourself. Because if you start seeing how those great artists work, you can watch and look for that lighting or composition tool to appear in front of you. That's why it's so important to study the work of great artists. Training your eyes, do this. Use your finger as a guide. You're on a railway, you're on a subway, you're waiting at a doctor's office, you're doing something really boring. You can always do this and look for a photograph. There's photographs around us all the time. But if our eyes are not trained to see them, we'll miss them. You know, have you ever looked at the work of a great photographer and you think, I could have photographed that. Why didn't I see that? You need to train your eye. It's just like playing tennis or golf or, swimming. You've got to practice and practice and practice and practice. Basketball, it has to become the muscle memory. Boom. And in this case, the muscles are in your eye right here and your ability to see and observe. Train your eye. Use this simple technique that will instantly improve your ability. Cameras. Okay, I love equipment as much as anyone else, but don't be obsessed with them. The most important thing, the most important thing, you guys listening, about your camera is this. You have to look at it and see what the camera sees, not what your eye sees, but what does your camera see? Bob Holmes has said that. Many great photographers say that. I say it. Marc Silber says it. If you don't know what your camera sees, you're going to miss the point. Your camera is not what your eye sees. Your eye is instantly adjusting to light. It's also the vision, your span of vision is super wide. Your camera may or may not, you're in a frame, you're in a rectangle. What goes on within that rectangle is what you need to photograph. You need to see that in your mind. And there's a little drill, there's an action item that you can do. Go photograph a scene. Take good mental note of what you're seeing. Take careful note of how it looks to your eyes. Then what you do is take that memory card out, go look at it in your computer and do a comparison. And start to see, oh, this is what the camera did with that light. I'm getting some, a streak through this thing. I'm getting, I didn't expose it quite right because I'm exposed for the highlights or I exposed for the shadows and the highlights are blown out. You need to know those things and you need to be able to compensate your camera accordingly. Tools like your histogram can definitely help you, and you should use your histogram, believe me. And you should use your exposure compensation, but you really, really, really have to think and train yourself to think and see what the camera sees. That's the most important tip I could possibly give you. And that includes your lighting, it includes your focal length, it includes depth of field, all those things. You really have to be able to visualize what your camera is doing. Because the more you know that camera, the better photographer you're going to be. That's why, by the way, don't go skipping around from camera to camera to camera to camera and hope that the newest thing is going to be the best thing. Because you are relying on your memory and your skill to take and create that photograph. And if you're always changing, you're changing all the variables all the time, you're just going to screw yourself up. Don't do that. Get to know your equipment as a close friend and just do that comparison and you will be a better photographer. I'm not kidding. Okay, just repeat that over and over again until you've really got it and you go, I know what this camera can see. I know how it processes this light. When I shoot it with film, it comes out this way. When I shoot it on digital, it comes out that way. You got to know those things. There is no shortcut, folks. Okay, even though I'm talking about instant things that you can do, you still got to work at it. Okay, now, capturing is blending visualization with knowing your camera. Don't get hung up on the rules. There are no rules of composition. There are guides. You got to train your eye, like I've already told you. Use your skills of visualization always. Let's take a look at some of those guides. I'm just going to pick a few of my favorites. Framing. I use framing all the time. There are many ways to frame a photograph. This is my photograph when I was in high school of Fausto, one of the workers in Mexico that I was working with. He's leaning in a window. It's a perfect frame, right? Windows, doors are excellent frame tools. What do? They add a border. They give it depth. They do all sorts of things. They give it contrast. Use framing, and it's a tool that you're going to use over and over again. Use a tree to frame. Have a person stand next to a window, a door, a window, or a building. It can be a frame. You can frame against a building. There's all sorts of different framing tools. Here's another using patterns. This is the d'Orsay Museum in Paris. There's a pattern formed by the clock. And my wife, Jan, is standing off center. It's breaking the pattern. This is a very cool compositional tool. Find patterns, break them. So the eye goes, wow, the eye loves a pattern. We love symmetry, we love geometry, and we love patterns. But you break it a little bit and it adds interest. Our old friend, my constant go-to guy, is Cartier-Bresson. To me, Photography is the simultaneous recognition in a fraction of a second of the significance of an event, as well as a precise organization of forms which give that event its proper expression. You got to, okay, that's a big quote. You got to unpack it for yourself. I could spend an hour on this quote. And you're going to go, Mark, look, he says in a fraction of a second. How can I possibly visualize something in a fraction of a second? Yes, you do visualize it. You put yourself in that spot. Wasn't that a visualization? You thought maybe if I stand here, something cool will happen. That's a visualization. And you see it. You actually have to anticipate the motion and be pressing the shutter before the motion completes, or else it's going to be too late. Here's an example. My friend's jumping off a sand dune. I had to press the shutter slightly ahead of their jumping off that sand dune. Otherwise, I would have missed it. You train your eye, you train yourself, go out and look for those moments. That's incredible stuff. I love capturing the moment. Light. You got to observe it. Look at light. Constantly be looking at the light around you. And you want to have the ability to notice things, especially significant, worthy of attention details. And that's what observation means. Look at it. Going back to the point about looking at art, here's our friend Vermeer. Vermeer lighting is very beautiful light. It's a light that comes in from one light source, in this case, a north-facing window that he used. He blacked out everything else in his studio, and it's just beautiful light. Everybody's got a single light source in their apartment, in their house, in their studio. Use it. Use Vermeer lighting. You can actually take your subject with no other lights in the room, have them sit down, facing the window, and you get all this beautiful shadowing on the other side of their face. It's wonderful light. It's warm. It's soft. You can use it constantly. Rembrandt. This is a self-portrait of Rembrandt. Rembrandt has its own unique lighting style where you see that there's the light source coming from this side here, and this side is in shade. And be sensitive to the quality of light. Look at natural light and turn off all the lights. This is talking about photographing inside a room, obviously. Turn off all the lights and let the side light come in from your window. And you can use that in terms of Rembrandt lighting or Vermeer lighting, and you'll just instantly have great portraits. Okay, processing, I'm not even going to talk about it because there's so much data out there already. But you got to know how to process your images. There's too many tutorials for me to even start talking about it. Let's just say, know how to process your images. And that leads you to your final step, sharing, get your work out to the world. It's so important to get your work out. Don't let it sit in your head. Don't let it sit in a shoebox, and don't let it sit on your computer. Get out there and share it. This is in the case of getting your exhibits, and there are ways that you can read about in this book that I wrote, Advancing Your Photography. I have a whole section on sharing. You can do all sorts of things. There's always local exhibits you can get into. You can put your work in a zine, as we're training people in our AYP Plus class. Obviously, social media. The problem with social media, you guys, is people go by so fast. It's fast food. It is not the same as what you see this girl doing. She's stopping, she's looking, she's commenting to a friend. That's the kind of real meaningful sharing that you want. And it's very fulfilling for you as a photographer to be sharing your work like that. And that's why I want you to make prints, okay? And there's many ways to do it. You don't think I can't share my work. Just know that you can, and we can help you get out there and do that. Okay, guys, I did a kind of a speed drill on that. That's the five things you can do to instantly improve your photography. You have to work at those things. You have to unpack them and try them and go, wait a minute, maybe I don't really know how to visualize. Maybe I really need to start understanding what my camera sees. Like, be willing to learn. That's the first gate to knowledge. You got to be willing to learn. I am a student of knowledge. I study every day. Every day I study. I don't close my eyes until I've learned something and I've really taken it in and absorbed it. And I want you guys to be like that as well. You can get all this information in my book, Advancing Your Photography. It's actually going into its next printing. Okay, this is the third edition. And because of that, we're a little bit behind. But if you go ahead and order it, you'll get them. You'll get them when they come out, and we'll also send you an e-copy of it. So Jared, maybe just you can stick the link in the description so people can get that book. Okay, well, I'll take a minute here, but let me just wrap this up. So you guys, I'm not kidding. Those 5 points are going to unleash you as a photographer, but you have to unpack them and you have to do them, and you have to do them over and over again. Okay? Let me hear from you on that. Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.